We Who Are About to Die just got a massive game-changing update, and there are a lot of new things to talk about, so I want to give you an overview of the new content and also some tips to help you adapt to this update quickly because the game truly feels very different now. So first off, we got 4 brand new match types in this update. Let's start with Draft. This is a totally different fight from anything that was in the game before. Instead of an arena, Draft takes you to an open battlefield and you fight in an army alongside your allies. There are a couple special things about these fights. First of all, they're always going to have the uniformed modifier, so basically that just means you wear the armor and use the weapons of the army that you're fighting for. You don't use any of your own stuff, which can be good if your stuff isn't so great. It's also really nice if you need a week to get your stuff repaired. Another unique thing about the draft is that there isn't any fame reward, just money. And they actually pay pretty well. I think these fights are pretty easy, you get lots of space, lots of teammates, and it's a fair fight in terms of numbers. It's also a great fight for bets like kills and damage. It's not great for time bets since it can take a while, but overall this is a pretty easy fight that can reward a lot of coin. Next we've got boss fights. So yeah, bosses, obviously that's also a brand new fight, and these ones are a little more intense. On the fight select, you're going to see the boss and his goons if he has any, and basically the boss is just a bigger, tougher enemy. He's got 150 HP instead of 100, he's got better stats, good weapons and armor. These guys are pretty dangerous. As for the goons, these guys actually only have 50 HP, so they're considerably easier to kill than the average enemy, but you still got to be careful with them. They get deployed in little waves, so you'll typically fight some goons before the boss appears, and you don't want to let them get your health too low or the boss could really mess you up. Another feature of the boss fight is that they're always spoils to the victor, and that's pretty decent because they use some really good weapons. Especially early on, killing a boss and taking his weapon is a great way to springboard a run. Later on, if you already have a nice weapon, you may prefer to duck a boss fight since the cash reward isn't as great as other fights. So the last kind of special fight is the tournament, and there are 2 types. Both tournaments have 3 rounds of fighting, and the regular tournaments have 2 teams, while grand tournaments can have up to 4. The first 2 rounds can have different numbers of units, then the last round will always be an elite enemy. Like the bosses, they have more HP and better stats, but they use regular loadouts. So really you can kind of think about these fights the way you would a boss fight. There's plenty of fighting to be done through the first 2 rounds, and then you still have to deal with a tougher enemy at the end. You do get healed for about 30 HP between every round, so if you take some damage, it's not the end of the world, but try not to get too beaten up before the last round. And the last new kind of fight is survival. So this is a normal match type, meaning you can see it any given week like all the other classic matches, whereas the 3 new fights I just talked about are special fights and only appear once in a while. These survival fights deploy enemies in waves, and the waves are time-based, not kill-based, so if you kill them quickly, you'll only be facing 1 or 2 enemies at a time, and it's actually really easy. On the other hand, if you take too long, it can pretty much turn into a 1v many. These fights pay a lot though, so it's worth taking them and working on your skills to be able to kill quickly. That's it for match types, but before we move on to talk about some new weapons, there are a couple more new modifiers to talk about as well. So I mentioned uniformed before with the draft, but it can also appear for any regular fight, and it's the same thing. You and your enemies are all dressed in faction gear. The most influential new modifier that I want to talk a little more about is rabble. This makes it so that everyone in the fight, except for you, only has 50 HP. This makes fights so much easier to the point that I'd pretty much recommend you take these fights every single time you see them. With a good weapon, you can literally kill enemies in 2 or 3 hits consistently, and if you think about a 1v8, it becomes a 1v4 in terms of how much damage you have to deal, so that's obviously a huge difference. Enemies still do the same damage though, so you can't be totally reckless, but these fights have great rewards for how much easier they are. There's also a 3rd new modifier called Impatient Crowd. This is a more minor one, and it just boosts your reward a little bit based on how quickly you can finish the fight. If you take too long, it actually decreases your reward though. It's not a huge boost, but it's decent for fights that you can get done quickly. Alright, so that's that for the new matches. Now let's talk about weapons and some gameplay changes that affect them. So I'm not going to talk about all the new weapons in this video because there are a lot of them, and you know, some of them are lower tiers and just not that great. Instead, I want to focus on some really good ones that you should look out for. Before talking about the specific weapons though, there are a couple important gameplay changes we need to talk about first. The first one is a bit of a nerf to shields. Shields are now a bit heavier than they were before, so they're going to slow your stamina regen even more than they used to. The other thing is that enemies are now a lot more active with their shields. They can actually aim their blocks now and react to your attacks. So if you played before this update, you probably knew how easy it was to spam overhead attacks and kill any enemy. They didn't even really try to block it. Now they're really reactive to it. It's actually hard to even land an overhead now, so you have to kind of play a little more properly and try to get past their shield in other ways. So with those two changes in mind, the weapons I think you really want to pay attention to in this update are two of the new two-handed axes, the Battle Chaka and the Great War Pick. These two are perfect for swinging right around a shield and getting big hits. Two-handed axes have always been good for this. The Great Chaka was already a great weapon, and now these two do pretty much the exact same job. So if you've never really gotten into two-handing before, now is a great time to do it. I actually think two-handing an axe might be the new best way to play this game. One really important thing to pay attention to though is that you're actually using a two-handed axe and not a polearm. It can be hard to tell just by looking. The Iron Double Chaka, for example, is a polearm rather than a two-handed axe, and the difference is that polearms can't swing both ways like the axes can. And to best get around shields, you want to be able to go either way, so it's actually a huge detriment to polearm type weapons to not be able to do that. The other great thing about using these axes is that they do extra damage to most shields too, so even if you aren't quite getting past them, you can break them really easily. So axes are way up, but there are also a few other really good weapons in this update. One of the new best weapons you can get early on is Morthos' Chaka. This is the weapon you get if you can kill Morthos the Bull, one of the early game bosses. This kinda just looks like an Iron Double Chaka at first. Not that it would be a bad thing to get one of those so early, but there's actually a pretty big difference. First of all, Morthos' Chaka is a little bit longer, which is nice, but the big difference is that it can stab. The Iron Double Chaka can't do this, and it makes the Morthos Chaka way more versatile. You can kind of use the stab as a left-sided attack, it's nice against other two-handers, and it's really just nice in general to have the option to stab. So this is a really good weapon, and because of it, I'd recommend you try to kill Morthos whenever you can. Another weapon that you can get from boss fights, but also from the store, is the curved Lafosi Daka. It's got great damage, it's really long, and the kind of hooked shape also makes it really good for a sword at getting hits past shields. The last weapon I want to mention is the new Linoleum Staka. It looks similar to the regular bronze Staka and doesn't seem too special at first, but it has better stats, and more importantly, it ignores 35% of armor, which is really good. This puts it right up there with other options like Imperius and the Faradaka, because even though it doesn't do as much base damage, the actual damage will end up being pretty similar after ignoring armor. So this is a great spear whenever you can get your hands on it. So that's it for actual new content, but there are some other really important gameplay changes that you need to know about. This update completely overhauled movement, and as a result, things feel a little bit different than before. You'll get used to most of it quickly, but there are a couple little tips I've got to combat some of the quirks. So the first thing is blocking with a shield. Before, your character leaned forward a lot more. Now he stands up straight. When you're blocking, this means the shield is closer to your body, which kind of makes it easier to get hit. You really want to try to maintain some distance even more now, and it really helps to dodge back as you block. You also have to aim your blocks a lot more deliberately now. You really have to look up, for example, to block up. So be really careful with your shield because it's a bit harder to use than before. Another little quirk with this update is that your bottom hand can come off the weapon a lot when you're two-handing, and it messes up your swings. I find usually clicking to attack and then canceling with a block kind of resets the hands. You might have to do it a couple times, but this can help you get back to where you can make normal swings. Another super important change is rotation rate. So now enemies will rotate slower based on how much weight they're carrying. This is especially relevant to shields obviously, and makes it a lot easier to flank shield users. Dodging to their sides and getting hits in before they turn is pretty easy to do, and it's a great way to damage them, especially with things like swords that aren't otherwise great at getting around shields. The last big change is how enemies behave in crowds. Before, they really just swarmed and they ended up crowding you and making it hard to do anything sometimes. They also used to hit each other a lot. Now they kind of take it easy a bit more and fan out so they aren't all on top of each other. And there's some pros and cons to this. For example, it's kind of a nerf to multi-hit weapons. Also, the reduction in friendly fire kind of makes things like 1v many a bit harder since you'll need to do more damage, but then at the same time you have a little more room to breathe in those fights. And that's about it. I think that covers the really important stuff in this update. Let me know your thoughts on it and how it feels to you. Personally, I'm liking it a lot. I'm going to have a bunch of videos coming up going into more detail on some of the other things in this update, as well as some brand new tips and tricks, so stay tuned for all of that. And that's that. So thanks for watching, enjoy the update, and I'll see you later.